the heart researchers and the great effort that's done. And speaking to you, it's obviously a lot of people here who've been touched by heart or cardiovascular disease, either themselves or family relatives. And that's what we're here for. We're here to make sure that we're doing our best possible effort of finding cures, preventions, and if we can't do that, of making life better and more bearable for people affected. Because we want to give back. We want to give back to everyone so that they won't feel, if only it were for my cardiovascular disorder. And we've got a fantastic team of scientists. But tonight we've got a very special presenter, this young man here, who I've worked with for, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, who's still hasn't learned to switch off his mobile phone.
I'm so connected with the outside world. Hello, Siri. Turn on Do Not Disturb.
But for those of you who've been here before, we've got a really fantastic format for these events, and that Katrina does a real Inquisition style Q&A, and we put the researchers on the thing. But we've also got fantastic input from an amazing person who's been affected by heart disease and a passionate advocate for it. But we're doing things in a slightly different order, and I'm going to ask Ben Freedman, not give his formal introduction, that's Katrina's, and I get told off if I pinch all the firepower. But Ben's going to do a welcome to country, because Ben introduced the Heart Research Institute to our major Indigenous health group, and he's the midwife for the fact that this is a major priority for us Indigenous heart. So Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to give the acknowledgement of country rather than welcome of country, although I have a very close connection with the land, and it's a very personal one. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners. I need to begin by turning on the microphone. I would like to begin.
You've actually got one.
That's for people online, but for the people in the audience, in case my voice doesn't project. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the Gadigal land on which we meet today. I have a very personal relationship. I was born, educated, raised, trained as a cardiologist, worked in hospitals as a clinician and as a researcher, and also in the Heart Research Institute and in the university, and I still live on Gadigal land, but I'm not a Gadigal man. I would like to also say that the Heart Research Institute is built on Gadigal land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we pay respect to their elders, past and present. We extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of all lands on which we live and work, those who are here in the audience and those who are here in the audience online. And I just wanted to say that that beautiful graphic that you can see is designed by Alex Beckett for the Heart Research Institute to show the synergy between the tree and between the arteries and veins that nurture us. And this is a very important representation of it, and a very important group. Jurali are now part of us. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Ben. That was a wonderful acknowledgement of country, and thank you, Andrew, for the warm introduction, and welcome to everyone tonight. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time to join us tonight for Heart to Heart, and thank you to everyone too who is joining us online. By way of introduction, my name is Katrina Dowling, and I lead the Development, Philanthropy and Communications team at HRI. As Andrew said, we are joined tonight by the wonderful Professor Ben Freedman, Heart Rhythm and Stroke Prevention Group Lead, and patient advocate and stroke survivor, Maryanne Bawden. Good evening, everybody. The focus of our conversation tonight is atrial fibrillation and stroke. And Ben will be talking at length about the wonderful research that you and the team are delivering within HRI. Before we get into the conversation, and for those of you who don't know a lot about HRI, I'd like to give you a very brief overview of who we are and why we're so passionate about the work that we do. HRI is an internationally recognised medical research institute with a single focus on researching the causes and complications of cardiovascular disease so that we can develop better diagnostics, treatments and cures. And we were established 35 years ago in 1989 to fuel both basic discovery research and translational research. And today we're comprised of 15 distinct scientific groups, each investigating a very distinct aspect of cardiovascular disease. We've got over 150 very passionate, energetic and dedicated staff. And we work across 2 locations. So here in our Newtown head office and labs, and we have other labs across at the Charles Perkins Centre at the University of Sydney. The team is focused on breaking new ground in terms of research, and as an organisation, we've got a commitment to nurturing the best and brightest minds, the rising stars of cardiovascular research. And we're also committed to facilitating opportunities for women building careers in science and research. And I know that Ben is a really terrific advocate and supporter of women in science. So why does all of that matter? Well, put simply, our reason for getting out of bed every day and doing what we do is that we want more people who are impacted by cardiovascular disease to have more time with the people that they love and care about. So that's what we're here for. So let's get underway tonight. I'd like to formally introduce you all to Professor Ben Freedman. Ben, as I said, is the Heart Rhythm and Stroke Prevention Group Lead and HRI's Director of External Affairs. Ben was previously a governor of HRI and one of the cardiologists at RPA at the time that HRI was founded. So you've been around for a little while, yeah?
As long as this place, at least.
He's been instrumental in the founding and further development of HRI. You're an honorary adjunct or visiting professor at the University of Sydney, Monash University, University of Melbourne, and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Can you add another university?
That's sufficient.
Okay. You were previously Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, the University of Sydney, 2003 to 2012.
When this person was the dean.
The Foundation Chair of Cardiology at Concord Hospital and former Head of Department Cardiology at Concord. You're a member of the Australian AF Guideline Committee and lead of the World Heart Federation Global AF Roadmap. Founder and chair of the steering committee of AF Screen International Collaboration. And you're awarded the 2023 Senior Researcher New South Wales Ministerial Prize for Cardiovascular Research Excellence. You've done a little bit of your time as well, yeah. So Ben is also a connoisseur of fine bow ties. Le Papillon is his preferred brand. And he said to me today, Katrina, if you're wearing a suit, you need to wear a bow tie. So I've joined the bow tie gang for tonight. Thank you for lending me the time. All right, let's get underway. So Ben, you've built an incredible career and you've dedicated your life to investigating cardiovascular disease, specifically atrial fibrillation and stroke prevention. Tell us about you. What motivated you to pursue a career in medical research and what keeps you going?
Well, strangely enough, it was accidental. I was 16 when I left high school and I couldn't decide between medicine, chemical engineering or law. I picked medicine. No particular reason. I would never have got in now because I didn't really have a definite vocation for it and I was too young. After 2 years, I did a BSc Med, basic research, biomedical. That gave me my passion for research. I worked with someone who was then a senior lecturer who became the dean, who became the pro vice chancellor. He taught me about research and service to the community in which you work and the community in which you live. I've always lived by that. When I graduated and wanted to become a specialist, I couldn't decide between cardiology and gastroenterology. I actually decided to be a gastroenterologist. And I went to the professor of cardiology and said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a gastroenterologist. He said, okay, I understand. I walked across the road and saw my life in front of me, putting tubes up people's backsides for the rest of my life. And I said, no. I walked back over and I said to the professor, I've changed my mind again. I'll do cardiology. I've never regretted it. And through my career, I've changed because I'm curious. And again, I've never regretted it. But it was that very first experience that drove me into research, and I am driven, and that's what drives me still, to find out. I'm curious. I want to find out what makes people sick, what keeps them well, and how to do it if I know how to. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we're pleased that you chose cardiology over gastroenterology. Now, as I understand it, you're a specialist in AF and stroke prevention. And I've read that AF affects 1 in 3 people over the age of 40, which is pretty astonishing. Let's unpack what that means. Are you able to tell us what is AF and what causes it?
I can do that. I think if you look around the room, 1 or 2 of you are over 40. I am. And if you look around at the other people who are over 40, and there's another one and another one of you will develop AF in your lifetime. It's very common, yet very few people understand what it is or that it's a problem. So here's atrial fibrillation. No, this is normal rhythm. This was a portrait of me. You see, I actually play the violin. And normal rhythm is very regular, and that's music to my ears. But next. That's what atrial fibrillation looks like. It's completely irregular. You'll see this has got a long gap between that beat and that beat, longer gap and then a short gap, completely irregular, very hard to miss. So if it's regular like a clock, tick-tock, it's normal. If it's irregular, then call your doc. Next slide. So that's what AF is, just an irregular rhythm, but it's not just an irregular rhythm. It's an irregular rhythm that causes problems. And that's what I'm about.
And what's the greatest risk for someone with AF? Does it reduce life expectancy, and what are the complications that it present?
Yes, it does reduce life expectancy. The death rate is higher, mortality rate is higher. But the most important complication, the most common complication, is heart failure. And you get lots of admissions because of heart failure. It causes stroke, but it also is related to dementia. So there's a lot of things that can cause problems about AF. It's not just an abnormal rhythm. And people need to understand it as just a marker of something that's going wrong and will cause cardiovascular complications.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about stroke? What exactly is a stroke, and what impact does it have on the body, both whilst somebody's experiencing stroke and following?
Well, I guess stroke is a bit like a brain attack. Usually the most common cause is when the blood flow is disrupted and part of the brain dies. That's pretty nasty because it doesn't take long for the blood flow to be closed for it to die. That's the far most common cause of stroke. And the things that people notice, it may be they'll be weak on one side, they can't see, they can't talk, their face droops. The signs can be quite subtle. And in fact, when I had a stroke 2 years ago, I wasn't aware I was having a stroke. I thought my devices were not working, my Apple phone and my Apple Watch. And then I tried to reboot them, it still didn't work. So I went to my laptop, that wasn't seeming to be working properly. I told my wife, she said, maybe you should go to hospital. I said, no. Doctors are always the worst. And you never listen to your spouse, who also is a doctor. So I rang my close colleague, who's a stroke neurologist, and he said, Ben, call an ambulance. That's what I did. I found myself in the emergency department saying, Ben, you're having a large brain hemorrhage and your blood pressure's over 190 and you're still bleeding. I thought I was going to die. So I think that's made me somewhat more passionate. I understand some people said that's a pretty extreme way to get lived experience. But I'm fortunate I survived pretty much unscathed. I wouldn't say I was lucky to have had the stroke, but I'm fortunate to have survived and to be able to work on it to try and prevent stroke. That's my passion. If we look at this slide, when the heart's fibrillating, it's not actually beating properly, and blood swirls and stays stagnant. You get clots forming, and the clots break off. And the favorite place for the clot, just keep going, to break off, if we keep going, next slide, to go up an artery to the brain. Next slide. Having trouble with the, as we come, we'll see this clot gradually moving up into the brain, blocking a big artery, and we come to the next one, and you see starting to droop next time, more drooping. First telltale sign, and then when we do a scan, next one, clots from AF are big. They block a big artery. This is the amount of brain that's affected. Can you see? It's really big. This will cause a huge deficit if it doesn't kill you. That's why it's so important to find AF before the stroke. Unfortunately, a third of all strokes are related to AF. And in those, AF was often known before but not treated. And in some cases, AF was only found at the time of stroke. I always say stroke is a very poor early warning sign of AF. We need to find AF before the stroke and prevent it. Thank you. We go on to the next slide. I think that we come to a bit of a break. Having a bit of trouble.
So I've read that AF places people at up to 5 times greater risk of stroke, and that 1 in 3 people who suffer a stroke have or have had AF. What exactly is the interrelationship, and why does AF heighten a person's risk of stroke?
Well, I think I was trying to describe how the stagnation of blood does it, but it's probably more complex than that. Anytime in medicine you think you have the answer, and it's a simple answer, you're almost certainly wrong. I've learned that as a researcher. It's more complex. And that's what I study, the complexity of it. That's not enough for me. I need to know why does really AF do it. We know that things will predispose you if you've got high blood pressure, if you've got diabetes, if you've had heart failure or a previous stroke, you're more likely to have another one. But that scoring system is very, very inadequate. And if you're over 65 and you get AF, nearly everyone is said to have a high risk of stroke, but in fact, it's not true. We need to find out who really has the high risk. That's where our research is connected. Yeah. Okay.
And you recently published a paper titled Frontiers in the prestigious American Heart Association journal, Circulation, and there's a copy of an article related to that paper on everyone's seat. The paper highlights the strong link between hypertension and AF. And you've highlighted that these are 2 of the most significant preventable risk factors for stroke. And you've also gone on to describe the combination of AF and hypertension as a ticking time bomb. Why is this so, and why is the combination so very dangerous?
People have often just thought of AF as a comorbidity. In other words, something that happens in people who have AF. But it's not so. There is very strong evidence that hypertension is a cause of AF. And about 70 to 80% of people with AF have hypertension. If we were to control hypertension better, discover it earlier, we would be having less AF. The other thing is that the combination of the 2 is very bad. Ticking time bomb, dangerous bedfellows, not good to have together. And we advocated this group. This is the AS Green International Collaboration that I lead. We advocated you could look for both at the same time. And that's what we should do.
Okay. And so for someone experiencing AF, how might it first present? And how might it develop over time? So what should people look out for? And do all people who have AF experience symptoms?
The answer to the last part of it is no. In older people, and I include myself as an older people, it's often asymptomatic. Maryanne, who had AF herself, wasn't symptomatic. It's very frequently asymptomatic. Or else the symptoms are very atypical. You're a bit tired, or maybe a bit out of breath. Oh, I'm getting older, I'm just a bit out of breath, or I'm a bit tired. But in fact, if you've got AF, that might be the first manifestation of it. When you're younger, it tends to cause more symptoms. But we've learned that the asymptomatic part is just as dangerous as the asymptomatic part. And here you can see, this is from general practice. People over the age of 65 who had incidentally detected AF. They visited the GP detected it, there's no symptoms at all. Look at the stroke rate if you don't treat it. In just 1.5 years, it's up to over 4.5%. If you treat it in the green line, it's actually seemed to have fallen off. Ah, that's it. If you treat it, you come back to the same sort of stroke rate as someone without AF. That's why we need to treat it. The next slide. We then said, what happens if you screen for it? They're not symptomatic. Well, we did that in Hong Kong. We screened 12,000 people in an outpatient clinic, and we found AF, which was asymptomatic. And what did we find? If you look on the left-hand side, the stroke incidence in the green line after 3 years was over 6%. On the right-hand side, if you had stroke of clinically diagnosed because of symptoms, exactly the same stroke rate, if you didn't treat it. But if you treated them, it's down to the black line in both curves. So in other words, treatment works. If it's asymptomatic, it's just as bad as if it's symptomatic. And if you treat it, the stroke rate comes down. That's why we need to find it first and treat it. And when people get the diagnosis, they have to keep taking the tablets. It's no good just to keep the tablets out and not check whether they're still taking them.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the lifestyle factors that can increase a person's risk of developing AF? And how can we best control or manage risk by adapting lifestyle?
Okay, some of the most important lifestyle changes are obesity and diabetes, overweight. That's an affliction of our age. Also, even exercise. Too little is bad, but if you overindulge, extreme exercise, particularly in older people, they call them master athletes. Older people wearing lycra, sort of pretending that they're 30, okay, and doing the Tour de France, something like that. They can damage the heart. Julie McMullen has done work on such people, and unfortunately a proportion get AF, but mostly it comes from not enough. So they're the main sort of risk factors that are lifestyle, but the other one is alcohol. Alcohol is a poison for the heart, and it produces atrial fibrillation. We know that for sure. There's lots of evidence. It's no doubt.
And and what about other medical conditions or comorbidities that play a role beyond obesity?
Yeah, well, high blood pressure that I've mentioned already, diabetes is another one, heart failure is another one, and kidney failure. These are the things that go along with AF and increase the risk of getting AF and also the risk of stroke if you have AF.
Okay, so how is AF tested and detected?
Okay, diagnosis. Let's have a look at some of the devices. The most easy way is feeling the pulse. You can all do it yourselves. And if it's regular like a clock, tick-tock, you're fine. And if it's not, go see the doc. It's been known for ages. Next. Unfortunately, it's so easy. Next, it's rarely done. This is how it used to be done. You notice the age of this. This is in the age when doctors used to take your pulse. How many people have visited your doctor where they took your pulse? Number one, there's no time. And even if they check the blood pressure, it may be an automatic device that doesn't actually check the regularity. Next. So this was the Economist Intelligence Unit in 2017. They did a survey. I helped them with this. Next slide. And this is, we asked a question of GPs around the world, what proportion of patients in the last 2 weeks who are aged over 65, where the guidelines say we should check for AF, what proportion did you check? Australia, next. This is where Australia was, 11%. That's what they said. What they did might be even lower. So this is not really high enough. Next slide. These are the ways in which we can test it. You can use devices that are handheld, things that you wear around yourself, all sorts of different devices like this. The next slide. And we can use devices like this. This is the very first device that took an ECG that connected to an iPhone 4. This is an iPhone 4 case. We were the first to use it in the world to screen in pharmacies. It was invented by 2 Australian engineers and 1 American cardiologist. It's now the biggest selling device in the world for detecting AF. We did multiple studies. You can see receptionists in general practice. No, that didn't work. Receptionists didn't want to do it. GPs, well, that worked a bit, but not all GPs wanted to do it. And we asked them to use one of these little ECG devices. They thought it was great. Some GPs would do it in 300 patients, others would not do it at all. We then gave a prompt to do it. We did this in metropolitan and rural practices. Worked up to a point, but wasn't very effective. Flu vaccination was quite good. We got the nurses to check when they were giving flu vax. But it's not sustainable, didn't get sustained, except in a few practices. We then thought, oh, it'd be a great idea if we could get the patients to self-screen in the waiting room. So next slide. So this is what we did. We had this vision here. This is the greatest inventor of them all, Thomas Alva Edison. He said, invention or vision without execution is hallucination. Unless you know how to do it, unless you can actually do it and it works in practice, don't worry about it. He also said, I've never failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that don't work. Next slide. So we tried it in waiting rooms. This is me, a bit younger, in our self-screen. This is AF Self-Smart. We had AF Smart and AF Self-Smart, but it was hard for the older patients to do this. What they would do is go up to the receptionist and say, what am I supposed to do? It's pretty obvious, but it wasn't. And the receptionists who were busy said, we can't do this. So they said, no, we can't do it. It's not sustainable. So everything you think about, they have problems. So next. So we have to come up with other devices. It was great because the patients thought it was great. The Atrial Fibrillation Association gave it their main award in the Palace of Westminster. Katrina Giskus, who worked with us, received this award from the patient groups. Great idea. It did work, but not sustainable. So next. This was what we tried in China, in Hong Kong. It was camera in front of the face, and it detected very slight changes in the color with each heartbeat. And you could tell the rhythm of each patient being regular or irregular in the waiting room. Multiple people. Fantastic. Only problem was people had to hold their face still for 1 minute. Have you ever tried to hold your face still for 1 minute? You're nodding. Yes, no, it doesn't work. So you can't nod, you can't move, you can't talk. Until we get a better facial tracking system, this is not so great. Next. So we're back to square one, and we're doing other studies you'll hear about in a moment. Thanks.
That testing of holding your face still for a minute sounds worse than having a passport photo taken. So I understand that there's significant interest in the early diagnosis and treatment of AF. Tell us a bit more about that.
I wonder if you could show the next slide. If we screen, you may pick up AF for the very first time. So we wanted to find, should we be thinking of recent onset AF differently? This was published about 3 weeks ago. It was published online in European Heart Journal, which is the premier journal of cardiology at the moment. It's all of these investigators from the 42 countries. It includes stroke physicians, GPs, pharmacists, epidemiologists. It also includes Melanie True-Hills and Trudy Lobban. These are people who are patient representatives. Every single paper that we write has patient representatives on it. Stroke physicians, GPs, nurses, cardiologists, epidemiologists, health economists. That's what's important if you're going to do this. And the next slide, it shows some of the things that we emphasize. You can see here, not just stroke, but dementia, anxiety, quality of life, heart failure, hospitalization costs. These are the things we have to think about when we have recent onset. What can we do to nip this in the bud before we get those effects? And that's what we were thinking about, not just how to do it, but why we might be interested and how should we change. And it was opportunities and also challenges.
Okay. And what role is self-screening or consumer-led screening playing in the detection of AF? And how can people best self-screen? And what about digital devices and technology?
Well, I've got an Apple Watch. It can charge. It can find my pulse irregularity. Fitbits do the same. Many other tracking devices do this. It can do it by shining a light through your skin and just checking your pulse. It can be done with an ECG. I can hold onto this and I record an ECG. There are many different ways. This ring that I have is also measuring my blood pressure as well as my my heart rhythm. There are lots of devices, and we can use AI to work out who's more likely to get AF. This is consumer screening. They do it themselves. Next one, you can see, although we can say, what should we do? Sorry, Siri, I didn't answer the question. Unfortunately, artificial intelligence is not always so great. But the problem is that we don't have a pathway. If people try to screen themselves, Apple markets it, Fitbit markets it, it might save your life. In the Apple Heart study, the average age of the people who were in the study was 40. People who are 40 don't commonly have AF. And if they have it, they have a low risk of stroke generally. So it was the wrong people to be screening, but that's who was done. We also say, well, we're not quite ready for it. And that's what we said. There are some caveats, but the genie's out of the bottle, well and truly. People are doing it, and we have to, as practitioners, work out what do we do about it? How do we use it properly? There are many tools, and I've got a few of them down here you can play with. Here's one of the tools. Here's another tool. Here's a blood pressure machine that can measure your ECG. And here's a blood pressure machine that can look at the regularity of your heart rhythm. So there are plenty of things that consumers can buy, and they're doing it. And we have to know how best to look after it and manage it. And we don't know yet. how best to manage it is the short answer.
Okay. And you recently secured a publication a little while ago for a paper called White Paper Post-Stroke Search for AF, once again in the journal Circulation. And the paper advocated for a change in the way that patients are monitored after suffering an acute stroke. So can you tell us about the changes to monitoring that you outlined in that paper? And why is this important in managing the condition and care?
Well, for many people who have what looks like a clot type of stroke, there's no atrial fibrillation, no AF at the time. So people think it could be AF. And so our approach in the past has just got to screen and screen and screen more intensively. But in fact, we've now come to realize that the AF you find if you screen intensively may be not as important as the AF that you find if it's present right at the very moment of the stroke. And if you think about it, if you do one 30-second pulse check and you find AF, that's 30 seconds out of the person's lifetime. If you put in a monitor, which will monitor 24/7 for 3 months, no, 3 years, it's 30 million seconds every year. It's just, if you do that, you'll find more AF, but the AF may not be so important. So if we go to this slide, this is the heart-brain collaboration that I established with the same neurologist I spoke to you about. We think that looking for AF for a long time is not the right approach. We should look for an atrial myopathy. This is an abnormality of heart muscle in the atrium, which causes AF, which causes AF to get stroke. We should look for that. And that's what we're doing. We've enrolled our first patient. We have a 4 million grant to do it. And we enrolled our first patient last week at Liverpool Hospital. And this is what we will do in the AIM study to try and work out, is there a better way to try and prevent the next stroke?
That's very exciting. Maryanne, I might turn to you at this point. Thank you for joining us tonight again. I understand that you have AF, you live with AF, and that you have suffered a stroke. Can you tell us about your health journey? What happened when you had your stroke, and did you know at the time that you had AF?
Thank you very much, Regina, and good evening again, everybody. I suffered a stroke actually on the 2nd of September 2017. So I've just celebrated my 8th year of being stroke-free. At the time I had my stroke, I didn't know I was having a stroke like Ben. He mentioned it was a sudden onset, it was an attack. The first thing I knew was when I got out of bed, I couldn't read my watch properly, thought the battery was funny, didn't think anything of it, went to the kitchen, started to unpack my dishwasher, and started to drop plates. And then I thought, oh, I've just been clumsy. So it was my husband who was actually, came out into the kitchen, saw what I was doing, saw that I developed a definite droop, and I was listening to one side. So unbeknown to me, I was not aware, and I would reiterate that I didn't know I was having a stroke. He'd helped me to a chair, and we're sitting here. I then slid out of the chair onto the floor, and he thought, well, this is not right. He'd had some information that men shared about when they had a defibrillator installed about what the signs of stroke were. He quickly called the ambulance to get the ambulance in, and I'm lying on the floor thinking, I've got the flu. What is all the fuss about? This is going to be very embarrassing. Of course, I'm not having a stroke. So these are the thoughts that are going through my head, because I could not see and I could not feel what was happening to me. So to answer the question about did I know I had AF, I had some minor surgery in 2007, and at the time I had gone into AF after the surgery, but it wasn't managed after that. The significance of the AF really wasn't something that was brought to my attention, nor the fact that it's a very significant contributing factor to stroke. And it's only post-event that I've known about it. I now am very meticulous in managing my own health and taking responsibility for that. I understand the function of medication in controlling the blood pressure, in controlling the the what do you call it, blood clotting, so an anticoagulant for that. I take a statin for the heart, and I'm fit and healthy, non-drinker, non-smoker. However, I've still been told that I do have hardening of the artery. So all these things, in conjunction with consistent AF, is a major problem with continuing AF. So if I had known at an earlier stage that I had AF, and if it had been managed, then the chances of my having a stroke, I think, would have been considerably decreased, because there was no doubt in my mind that at the time when I had the stroke, that I would have been in AF, because post-stroke in the intensive care, that was one of the issues, was the fact I was in AF and I could not be released from the intensive care because I was still in AF. So that is a definite indicator that that's what would have happened.
Yeah. So tell us about how your daily routine, your lifestyle, your new normal has changed or shifted.
Well, so it was a significant change, obviously, post-stroke, because some of the things that I was doing previously, I wasn't doing. It took me, though I was one of the very fortunate ones in that I had an endovascular clot retrieval at Liverpool Hospital. I was taken straight to Campbelltown when I was administered with the TPA, so the blood clotting started, and then the clot removal, it gave me back. Basically, it gave me back my life, because by the time I got to Liverpool, I was completely paralysed down the left side. My face was drooped, my vision was blurry, my speech was blurry, and I was told in no uncertain terms that had the neurologist and intervention radiologist not done the procedure then and there, I would be a vegetable. So to answer your question today, if I hadn't had the procedure, I would not be sitting here, because I would be incapacitated. And so my life now is, I'm very blessed. I'm fortunate that I can come and talk to people. I'm with Ben and the Heart Foundation, because I understand and highly value the significance of research. Without research, we do not have these innovative treatments. We do not have the ability to treat people early. Now with these early detection programs that we're trying to put in place in the HRI, more lives can be saved, because we're 1 in 4 people globally are going to have a stroke. It's a big factor, big life factor. So my life now, unfortunately, I had to give up work because my family were most insistent that I didn't drive long distances to continue my employment. That was a big thing for me and a big shock to me, because that then meant, how do I fill that void, And though the initial recovery was excellent, and so as regaining my movement and everything else, there was very significant post-stroke factors such as depression, anxiety, concern about having another stroke, what is my, what's happening, confusion, I guess. I was a very organised person, and my life suddenly became disorganised because I just wasn't thinking on the same level that I was. It took a long time for my brain to catch up, because it had suffered trauma. So it took a long time for that. So then gradually, it's taken a while, but gradually, I've rebuilt what I do. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I'm enjoying life and I'm enjoying being part of it, but I do take particular care of my health.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And what advice would you have for people who may be living with AF and for those who, like yourself, have suffered and come through after having a stroke?
I think that the key thing is to manage your own health, and to particularly now that you're aware of AF, to manage consult with your doctor or your cardiologist how best to manage your health, whether it's medication, a combination of medication and exercise, lifestyle changes. Definitely don't smoke. Big no. As Ben said, alcohol. Reduce alcohol. There's plenty of alcohol-free wines available in beers now. So change your lifestyle basically, but most particularly, do take responsibility. Be aware. Educate yourself. There's plenty of education available, and no, don't look at things and say, well, it won't happen to me. It'll happen to somebody else, because you could be the person that has a stroke. You could be the person that is having the stroke. So I would say, manage your health, take responsibility. Don't expect the doctors to repair and fix you up and send you back off as good as you were beforehand, because that may not happen. So prevention is better than the cure. And on that finishing note, I do have to say one thing. Sophia Loren. Oh, doctor, I'm in trouble. Unfortunately, it's atrial fibrillation. So do aware of it. Don't let it happen to you. Talk to your family. Make sure that, and particularly if it's hereditary, that your children and your family know about it, so that they can also look to the future to themselves. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, and I think that point is a good one. That you've got to know your family history.
That's right, because other things will come up like hypertension, diabetes. Take them seriously. And then still have the time to enjoy your life. Do the precaution, do the preventive medicine, and you'll be right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, that backstory with us. It's, a very personal story. We do thank you for sharing it with us. And we're delighted too that you are part of our consumer group panel, which we are kicking off tomorrow, which is great.
I'm certainly honoured to be part of that and to be part of the research, because it's set up without the research, we don't have innovation, advancements that we need. So thank you to Ben, and thank you to all the team for looking after us, keep getting things happening for us.
And thanks, Maryanne. And Ben, can you tell us about the Safer Oz study? As I understand it, HRI runs the only international arm of the Safer study run by the University of Cambridge. Are you able to tell us about this study and its significance?
Well, Safer study will be the largest study in the world of screening for atrial fibrillation. It has already enrolled over 100,000 patients in England and over 2,000 in Australia. One of our investigators is Maryanne Bawden. She has really been instrumental in advising us when we were rolling this out, and will be attending the all-investigator meeting tomorrow. So Safer Oz will use that little device you can see, a Zenicor. It's a thumb ECG. Anyone who wants to have a look at these devices at the end, please come out and see. This one is very easy to use for older people. We send it out in the mail. Our research assistant is Anushka Jacob. Is she here? Can you stand up, Anushka? Anushka is a paramedic, and she knows about ECGs and blood pressure, and she hands out all of these in the mail, and the patients are able to do it themselves, and they check their own ECG 4 times a day for 3 weeks. Is that right? And then they send it back to us, and if there's anything abnormal, it's picked up on the web. It's sent to me by another doctor. And finally, if there's a diagnosis made, we tell the GP and the patient is treated. The problem with all previous trials so far is that they've been too small. The screening committees say, yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but show us the evidence that if you take half the people and do it, and the other half and you don't screen, that they end up better. Fewer strokes and no adverse problems. Well, that's what we will find. And this is what the AS Screen International collaboration has set out to do, try and put it all together, not just with one study, but this will be, Safer Oz study is the biggest study. Next, these are the people who work with me. You'll notice they happen to be women. That's because they were the most able. They were not medically qualified, except for one, Katrina Giskus, who started life as a dietitian and decided she wanted to be a GP. We have all different people from different walks of life: nurses, physiotherapists, lawyers, public health people. This is Safer Oz.
Great. Now, I know too that you're passionate about improving health outcomes in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. what is the incidence of AF and stroke in First Nations people? And are they the same, the same risk or heightened risk when compared with non-Indigenous populations?
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians have AF 20 years earlier than non-Indigenous people, 20 years. And when they get it earlier, below the age of 50, their stroke risk is more than twice as much as people who are non-Indigenous. So this is a huge problem, and it's in all First Nations people. So next slide. We did a big screening study, and these are the communities that we screened in all across this country. Next. And we found AF in younger people. We were originally going to look in older people, and guess what? There are not that many older Aboriginal Australians. Why? They've died of cardiovascular disease before they get to the age when we might screen them. So we actually have to, and we are trying to get screening part of a health assessment and showing how we can do it effectively and showing that it can be treated effectively. Next. I'm also working with people in America. We've done a similar study in tribal Indian clinics in Oklahoma. Exactly the same problem. Guess what? Exactly the same problem in New Zealand with Maori and Pacifica. So this is a common problem in First Nations peoples around the world, and something that we have a collaboration to try and overcome. And I think we can do something for our own Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who we work with Gerald.
Yeah, really important. Right, so we're pretty tight for time. So I'm going to ask one final question before we open up to questions from the audience. Ben, what are your dreams and what's your vision for research related to AF and stroke into the future, and for medical science more broadly in Australia and beyond?
Well, my dream and vision is to have the evidence that will make it possible for all governments to say, we should do this. And when they do it, if we get the answer, we will have the way in which to do it, because we'll have done everything and we'll know what works. The second thing is we won't just do it for Australia, but if we get an answer from SAPA, we'll be able to roll it out immediately in Australia. So I have a vision that I think can work because we have the execution worked out. But I think it's not enough unless we understand why AF causes it, not just the simple answer, but the more complex answer. We won't be able to say, oh, this person we should treat with anticoagulant, but that one we should not, because the risk is too low and they have a risk of bleeding. We can do better. And my inquisitive mind is what my vision is, to keep doing research to find the answers that will allow us to personalize this, but to carry it out effectively in countries as far-flung as Mozambique and South America and China and Hong Kong and Japan and India. We need to be able to think globally. And that's what, if I just sort of come through the very last slide, this is what the AF Screen International Collaboration looks like. I always show this slide to them to make sure they understand that Australia is always on top. But we're very global in our reach, and our commitment is to find an answer. We're not trying to say everyone should do it. We're trying to find out, is it right? So that's my vision, to find out, is it right? And then how can we make it happen?
Yeah, it's an incredible and compelling vision. So thank you, Ben. Thank you. I'm going to open up to questions now from the audience. Does anyone have a question? Alan.
Ben, you said when you detect AF, you treat it, but what does that mean? What do you actually do?
Well, it has to be individualized for the person who has it. If you're 30 and have AF, it's different than if you're 70 and have AF. Each person has a risk of stroke, a risk of dementia, a risk of heart failure, and we have to look at what that is. There's no question that if you can prevent strokes, you will reduce dementia, but we don't know exactly how it works. But in younger people, we're seeing more strokes related to AF in younger people. We can't pick who is at risk. Mostly we say you're too young, risk is too low. But I think we're not doing well enough. So I think the answer to that question is we need to know more. But at the moment, we can personalize it up to a degree. And what we do, number one, to make sure you're getting anticoagulant if you need it, so you don't end up like Maryanne with a clot when you could have had it prevented. Number two, should we be trying to stop the arrhythmia in some way? A lot of this might just be lifestyle change. That might be enough. Really managing the high blood pressure meticulously, that might be enough. Or we might need to think of different targets. How do we prevent the heart muscle disease in the atrium that causes all the complications? So we know enough now to know quite a bit about what to do, but it's very different for different people. That's why you need a doctor to look at it and say, what should be in your case? What should be in your case? What should be in your case if you develop AF? And what could be in your case if you develop AF at the time we only found out about it at the time of stroke? That's very likely it's been going on for a long time before. I hope that answers your question.
You mentioned earlier for older people with AF, too much exercise. I'm 82. How much is too much exercise?
We're talking about master athletes. Master athletes are people who continue to run marathons or do the Grand Tour of France, the last leg.
That extreme.
That extreme.
Yeah.
Okay. In general, most people who are older who exercise, it's not too much. We're talking about master athletes, people who push themselves to endurance levels when they're older. That will damage the heart.
So extreme athletes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think you probably don't have risk there. You may not. I might be misreading you. I certainly don't.
I do stuff.
I think so. Not marathons, no.
Ben, thank you. That was wonderful. You've achieved a lot and had an extraordinary career, and it's still going. I just wondered if there's a particular moment or thing that you're most proud of in your career today. Is it the AF screen? Is it, like I said, you've done so much. I'd love to know.
I think AF screen is a pretty amazing thing to have done. I never thought it would get off the ground. And I was surprised that it's lasted 10 years. I thought we'd go for 5 years and then we'd outlive our usefulness. Hasn't happened. That's the one thing. I think the other thing that I'm most proud of are the people who I've trained along the way. It just so happens 2 of them were physiotherapists, one a man, one a woman. Another physiotherapist later on, who is now my 2IC. A nurse who trained, and all of them are professors now, doing fantastic things in other fields, because I started out in secondary prevention after heart attack. And going to atrial fibrillation for me is only the last 12 or 13 years. I consider myself an early career researcher, even though I'm not that early. But also the other people, another person, a nurse who became a professor in Edinburgh and was the head of the European Society of Cardiology, Association of Cardiac Nurses and Allied Professionals. Fantastic advocate. She trained with me and has become a powerhouse. Another person who's a dietitian turned GP, now an associate professor, and she's doing research in general practice. She was also motivated by AF in a family member, and that's what made a change to work as a GP. But if in any way I've contributed to their motivation to do work, a lawyer who got sick of law, did public health, and is now an associate professor in prevention of sports medicine injury and atrial fibrillation. She writes lots of papers with me, fantastic intellect. But these are the people I'm most proud of. These are the legacy I will leave.
And you mentioned that the blood just flows around in the heart in a little section, and that's what AF is. So there's no cure for that, is there?
There is. In other words, the heart prefers normal rhythm. If you look at a fibrillating atrium, why it's called fibrillating is that it's actually beating about 400 times a minute. And it's so fast that it's just shimmering. It looks like a bit of jelly. Touch it and it just shakes like this, fibrillating. We don't conduct all of those impulses, otherwise we'd be going at 400 a minute. It only goes at about 100 or 80. But if you get it when you're young, it might be going at 150, 160. You can cardiovert, put an electric shock through the heart, and it can come back to normal rhythm. You can also do operations electrophysiologically, and you don't have to do it with surgery by putting catheters into the heart, either freezing or putting radio frequency current or other sort of current to the pulmonary veins, and you can prevent atrial fibrillation and cure it. We're not yet sure whether curing is worth it. Certainly reduces symptoms. It reduces the burden of atrial fibrillation, which is important. If you're in AF all the time, if you're only in AF a few minutes every 3 months, it's different. So the answer is yes, we can at the moment reduce the burden and sometimes completely prevent it with procedures that are working, and they call it ablation. And we don't know whether we should do it. And I think probably we might do it more often in future.
Just one more question. So can someone be in AF 24 hours a day?
Absolutely.
Really?
Maryanne has been in AF since her stroke,
Really?
24 hours a day for 8 years. It's called permanent.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And it's consistent with a completely normal life. So long as we control the rate of strokes. So that's called rate control. The other one is called rhythm control, where we try and get you back in a normal rhythm. If you leave it for 8 years, it may not be possible to get back to a normal rhythm. And that's why we look at things earlier. If we can do things earlier in the course, we might not get to the stage where it becomes persistent and permanent. And that's why our sort of last white paper and state-of-the-art review, early management, could we nip it in the bud? Could we prevent it? And we need to look at things more closely than we did in the past.
Do we have any other questions? No? All right, we might then wrap up. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It's been really lovely to have you join and have your company. I hope that you found the conversation really interesting and informative. I would like to thank you, Maryanne, for joining us. Yeah. Well, wonderful. It takes a lot of courage to share a personal story like that. So we really thank you. And we thank you too for continuing to work with us in our groups. It's really much appreciated. And I'd like to thank you, Ben. You're an amazing person, an incredible researcher. And I absolutely agree. All of the work that you've done and the guidance and mentoring and development of people is an absolutely incredible legacy to create and to eventually leave. So thank you. I've had a lot of fun working with you on this. So thank you. We look forward to you joining us again for our next Heart to Heart. I can see Johnny Lou sitting there. Johnny is the lead of our cardiovascular drug development group, and will be joining us for our next Heart to Heart on October 28th. So please put that one in your diaries. If you have really learned something tonight, enjoyed what you've heard, please share it on social media. We'd love for you to connect and share our messaging. And again, we are reliant on philanthropic support to deliver the fine work that our research team do. So if you, your family and friends are in a position to get behind HRI and provide philanthropic support, once again, that would be greatly appreciated. So I'd like to wrap up now and just thank you once again all for making the time to join us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yes.